Hello BookTube, my name is Elizabeth and welcome back to the Owlery. Today I'm so excited. This is probably one of my favorite videos to record every single year. It is my favorite reads so far of 2017. So I always do a favorite reads in June and then a favorite reads in December. So you have one for like the first half of the year and the second half of the year, and I just get so excited when I do these videos. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with my top. I think I have like 7 or 8 books on this list, and they're definitely not in order. I could never ever pick an order for these books, so these are just some of my favorites. The first one is My Lady Jane by Cynthia Han, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is a historical fiction comedy. Basically, Lady Jane Grey was the king after King Edward, so it went like King Henry VIII, his son Edward, and then Edward died sickly before he could get married or have kids, so he gave the next in line to the throne to his cousin Lady Jane Grey, and Edward's sister, Bloody Mary, actually beheaded her after she was queen for only 9 days. That's what really happened in history, right, you guys? But Cynthia Han, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows wanted to give Queen Jane a happier ending, so they rewrote the story of Lady Jane Grey, and it was so fantastic. They put some magical elements in there, so instead of Protestants, they changed it to Ethians, and Ethians are these people that can turn into animals. Lady Jane Grey's husband is a horse, an Ethian that can turn into a horse, but he has no control over it. So during the day he's a horse, at night he is a man, and the horse puns are hilarious. There are just so many really cool things in this story that I really enjoyed. I loved everything about this book, and it was just absolutely amazing, hilarious, so good. Next is Alex and Eliza by Melissa De La Cruz. While this story had its problems, it was a huge swoony read for me. I loved the romance and the story. How are my first 2 books on this list historical? That's really funny, but it's the story of Alexander Hamilton and his wife Eliza and how they met and how they fell in love, and it's just, I loved it so much. It was so good. There were some obvious historical inaccuracies, you guys, but it's called historical fiction for a reason, and I really enjoyed the love and the swoon, and just, it was amazing, and it just makes my heart go a-flutter, and it makes me warm and fuzzy inside, and I loved it. And a tip for you guys, if you love Hamilton, if you've seen Hamilton the play, and you are like, you have this idea of the way that Eliza and the Schuler sisters and all the other characters are supposed to be in this story, just go in without any of that knowledge, because every single negative review I've read of this book are because they're like, the characters didn't act like the characters in Hamilton. They're not supposed to be the same characters. Lin-Manuel Miranda interpreted the characters one way, Melissa De La Cruz interpreted the characters the other way. They're not gonna be the same. So go into the book knowing that they're not gonna be like the characters in Hamilton, just FYI. Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. This is a contemporary novel. My favorites list is so strange and is not normally what my favorites are. So, okay, Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver is basically about this girl who dies in a car crash, and she relives the day of the car crash every day for like 8 days, and she tries to obviously change the course of events. Does she succeed? Doesn't she? How does it end? You don't know, and it just kept me on the edge of my seat. I needed to know all of the things. I don't have any words because I don't know how to explain the way that this book made me feel, but it was just so terrific, and the way that all of the characters grow throughout the story. And it's interesting too because the main character grows and the side characters grow, even though they don't know that they're reliving the same day over and over again. Only the main character does, and it's just really interesting read, and it makes you think about life and death and the afterlife and what would you do if you could relive your life again, and it was just super cool book. A Light and Alone by Scott Seeger. This is the 2nd and 3rd book in the Generations trilogy, and I loved this series. I read Alive last year and fell in love with it, and this was so good. Basically, Alive is about this girl wakes up and she's stuck in a coffin, and once she escapes from that coffin, she realizes that she's in a room full of coffins, and then everyone in those coffins, some of the people are alive and some of them are dead, some of them are young adult teenagers and some of them are children, and she kind of has to figure out, they all have to figure out, who are they, how did they get there, what is the purpose of them being there, and it's kind of like a dystopian science fiction, and it is fantastic. It is so good. The main character is amazing, probably the strongest, most kick-ass female I've ever read in a book, and it is a diverse book with LGBTQ characters and characters of color, albeit it doesn't really happen until later on in the second or third books, and it's not very big prevalent in the story, but they're there, and I just really loved this entire series. It was fantastic. Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire. This book was so interesting. I went in knowing almost nothing about this book because everyone was just raving about it, but not really giving synopsises about it, which is a little bit of a pet peeve. Like, if you're gonna rave about, if everyone on BookTube is gonna rave about a book, somebody please give me a synopsis. Don't just assume that I know what you're talking about, because I don't. But anyway, rave aside, or rant aside, this book is basically about, it's a school for children who come back from portal worlds. So basically like Alice in Wonderland, Narnia, like where you have to go through a portal to get into a fantasy world. So those are children who go through these portal worlds and come back, can't get back through, and how they're like readjusting to being into the regular mundane world. And this book is, again, a book that has LGBTQ characters, diverse characters, and it's just so interesting to see. And the Shauna McGuire makes up her own portal worlds while also putting in portal worlds that we know from our own, you know, stories and fairy tales. And it was just so good and so interesting and short and sweet, but the perfect size. It wasn't too long, it wasn't too short, and it gave just enough of the story, and it was just overall completely excellent, and I loved it. The Black Key by Amy Ewing is the third and final book in the Lone City series, and it was amazing. Basically, The Jewel, which is the first book in the series, is about this dystopian society where girls, it's very similar to The Handmaid's Tale. Girls from lower class society who are fertile are used to become surrogates for the upper class society. So there are obvious differences from The Handmaid's Tale to the Lone City series, but at its core they're pretty similar. If you're enjoying watching The Handmaid's Tale right now on Netflix, highly recommend the Lone City series. It's excellent, really, really good. I don't want to give too much away because I think it would spoil it, but the third and final book in this series was an amazing last book in a series. It ended it so well. And I think she kind of left it open to kind of like have like a spin-off series, which I think would be really cool. I don't know if she has any plans to do that, but I can definitely see it coming. I really enjoyed this series, you guys, and like I said, if you're enjoying The Handmaid's Tale, I highly, highly recommend this one. And last but not least, The Sun Is Also a Star by Netgalley, and this was actually my first book that I read in 2017, and it still has held up as one of my favorite books. This is a contemporary about a girl who is trying to prevent her family from being deported back to Jamaica, and so it takes place over the course of one day, and she meets a boy on her journey to go find a lawyer. Basically, she's going to find an immigration lawyer and keep her family in the country and not having to be deported. And it's a love story, and it was just really, really good. Like, the amount that can happen over the course of one day is really interesting. And there are these little parts, like the whole story I believe is told from our main female character, but there are little bits, like small page-length chapters of little inserts from people that she encounters, and at the end of the novel it kind of all wraps up and comes together, which was the most interesting part of the story. I really, really enjoyed like this entire thing. I don't want to give too much away, but it was fantastic, amazing, wonderful, wonderful book. Alright guys, so those are my favorite books that I've read so far in 2017. Let me know in the comments below if we have any in common. Are any of these books your favorite books as well? I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, click here for one of my other videos, or if you really are enjoying the content that you're seeing, you can click my face here to subscribe and be notified whenever I post a new video. Make sure to also check the links down in the description below. Again, thank you guys so much for coming, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!